Good afternoon to you. Mark Sutt with HurricaneTrack.com here with your Hurricane Outlook and discussion for Monday, May 6, 2019. Hope your week is going well so far. Hey, it's just Monday, so if you screwed up today, you've got the rest of the week to get it right. Trying to think positive here. Going to be a busy week for me as I get ready to release the 2018 edition of Tracking the Hurricanes. That's coming out on Friday. I'll talk more about that towards the end of today's update. Let's get rid of the image of me for now anyway and take a look at a couple of items of note. First, it's National Hurricane Preparedness Week. The main thing that I'm going to say regarding this whole issue of hurricane preparedness is stop driving your vehicles through floodwaters. That's how people are dying. Freshwater flooding. We're saving lives from storm surge inundation. And, I mean, think about it. Michael was a Category 5. And it had a violent surge, and enough people evacuated that so far 5 people, in terms of the tallies, lost their lives. While that is terrible, that certainly is a lot better than 500. I think we can all agree with that, or 52, or 25, or whatever. We want the number to be 0, but when we think about the surge in Florence, especially in New Bern, North Carolina. Nobody died in the storm surge as far as we know from Florence, but many people died from floodwater, especially driving their vehicles through. So as we think about preparedness this week of May 5th through the 11th, I want you to think about, do I drive my vehicle through those floodwaters? And if you know people that do that on a regular basis, tell them to cut it out. It's not a good thing. All right, looking at the subsurface here, this is very interesting. Look how it is just absolutely waning away. You go from late February through March. The El Nino was really coming on strong, and now this is starting to shrink away and wither. You can clearly see that, this large area of warmth at depth shrinking. And now we are replacing that with a lot more of this subsurface cold anomaly. Anomaly is just a departure from normal. That's what that means. And so watch this area here. You go from all that warmth, and now you start to fill it in with this cold subsurface anomaly pattern. And the El Nino seems to be continuing this collapse as of late. I don't think it's going to switch over to a La Nina, which is just another way of saying a colder El Nino Southern Oscillation phenomenon, a colder anomaly pattern, but this is not the look of a strengthening El Nino. I mean, come on, you saw the same thing that I saw there. It's shrinking away. All of this upper ocean heat content is really starting to diminish, and in fact, over here in the extreme part of the western Pacific, it's all good. It's normal. It's right where it should be. See, right down the middle there, right in the middle. That's your dividing line between warmer on the right-hand side of the scale, colder on the left-hand side of the scale. In this part of the West Pack, where usually these westerly wind bursts generate these subsurface warm pools come from, that's where this originated from, was way over here. There's nothing there. In fact, it's cold in the subsurface of the western Pacific. So, there's a westerly wind burst coming. I saw Dr. Klotzbach and others tweeting about that. It all gets very complicated. What are you talking about, Mark? Westerly wind burst, etc. Basically, when you drive westerly winds across this part of the Pacific, by the way, this up here is the surface of the ocean, any warm water, upper ocean heat content that resides in the West Pacific gets sort of shoved downward in what's called a downwelling Kelvin wave, and then it gradually migrates across, reaches the surface, spreads out through the trade winds that are naturally there, usually, and you get an El Nino. That's a very simple way of a very complex pattern to describe it. And there's no more ammo sitting over here. So we'll see. If we look at it from the surface point of view, this is the anomaly chart that updated on the 2nd, so this is a few days old. Nevertheless, it's still pretty valid. Yeah, it's warmer than normal at the surface. You can clearly see that. But let's take a look back at 2015. That's the last time we had an El Nino, and it was a lot warmer then, and it was just getting started, believe me. You remember that. And also you note back then, the Atlantic out here was much colder than we are seeing as of late. So, looking at just the anomalies at the first part of May here, the departures from normal, if I had to say, what does the hurricane season look like it would be? Well, the Pacific's a little bit warmer than normal, so I would say probably a slightly more active Eastern Pacific, perhaps maybe a Central Pacific season that is busier than normal. As far as the Atlantic, that pattern right there does not scream negative, not overwhelmingly negative, not overwhelmingly positive either. There's not this large area of warmth that has grown in the tropics. Not yet. We know that can change. So if we look and say, well, what should happen? You would think, all things being equal, we would have a average hurricane season. Maybe 10, 12 named storms, something like that. 14 maybe, considering we get a lot of subtropical development that satellites detect very well these days. Probably 6 or 7 hurricanes forming. And out of those 6 or 7 hurricanes, you could expect maybe 2 or 3 becoming a major hurricane, a Category 3 or higher. That makes logical sense, knowing what we know about how the tropics work, with the El Nino kind of fading over here. It's a big question mark as to how strong this gets or how weak it gets. The Atlantic, still somewhat of a question mark. Kind of colder up in the North Atlantic here, warmer to average in the main tropical development region, but no overwhelming signals. That's the bottom line here. So I think you can just say, yep, 50-50 shot, we get an average season. That's just what we see in May. We know how conditions can change. All right, looking at the Gulf of Mexico, actual sea surface temperatures, anywhere that I am coloring with the blue line south of that area is generally warm enough for development. That's the 26 degrees Celsius isotherm, 27 Celsius here with this green, and then 28 Celsius showing up in some areas. The Gulf of Mexico will always be warm enough for cyclones to develop. And right up here along the shelf areas of Louisiana and Texas, getting close to 26C, and even up here right against the coast of Florida here, real close to that as well. Right against the coast, 25, 26 Celsius. That's just about getting there for me to go get in the water. I went down to Wrightsville Beach the other night with the family. We went looking for ghost crabs out on the Mason's Inlet area at Wrightsville Beach. And the surf was coming in, of course, and dipped my toes and ankles in the water, and it felt pretty good. Water temperatures off of my area, speaking of that, warming up nicely. Look at that, this color right in here off of Wrightsville Beach and vicinity, Carolina Beach, down to Oak Island and that area, about 23 Celsius. So, low 70s, not bad. Pamlico Sound, warm, probably 74, 75. But then you have this longshore current that comes down off the east coast and mid-Atlantic. So areas, Virginia Beach up into parts of Chesapeake Bay, Atlantic City, those water temperatures still in the 60s if you're lucky. I guess they are in the 60s in most cases. And then down near Florida and Georgia, South Carolina, low country, water temperatures getting closer to 80 Fahrenheit. So by the time we get to Memorial Day, everything will be nice, and you can jump in the water south of about 36 degrees latitude, which is about right here, for those of you keeping track of geography. There you go. Unless you have a boat. If you have a boat, you can come off of Cape Cod and go down to the Gulf Stream, a couple hundred miles away or so, right? Several hundred miles, and jump in there. Just watch out for the great white sharks, okay? Some friendly advice from Mark. All right. Phil Klotzbach, the Colorado State University, Dr. Phil Klotzbach, he specializes, of course, a big, obviously the mentee of Bill Gray. Bill Gray was his mentor, the late Bill Gray, for seasonal forecasting. And he's got this unique chart that shows the various agencies, a way to visualize the data, and what they're generally predicting for the upcoming hurricane season. And if you look at the bottom here, kind of hard to see, this is Colorado State. This is AccuWeather, Tropical Storm Risk, Weather Bell, CFAN, Weather Tiger. What the heck does that say? 268 Weather, never heard of them. North Carolina State, DTN, which I think that's digital. I don't remember what that means. My apologies. Storm Geo, MU. I don't know who that is either. He's adding everybody in here, and then Radiant Solutions. Some of these I've never heard of, and we're getting probably too many in my opinion, but that's okay. So let's use yellow here to highlight a couple of interesting things. One of them, 268 Weather, anywhere from 4 to 10 hurricanes. Okay. And then you have Tropical Storm Risk, which is indicating just a few hurricanes, between 4 and 5, something like that. So sort of a below average season. And we could analyze this all day. Let's just get to what my point is. And his point, Dr. Klotzbach, there's considerable spread in Atlantic seasonal hurricane forecasts released to date. The average of all the 12 forecasts that he's got here so far calls, oh, look at that. This is what I was just talking about. A near average season, with predictions ranging from slightly below average to above average. All right, so you can go to seasonalhurricanepredictions.org, or just follow Phil. That's the better way to do it. Follow Phil on Twitter, and you can see that link there, and you can read all about it. I thought this was an interesting response here. The forecast for 4 to 10 hurricanes might be the most useless possible. Since 95, which is 18 seasons, 75% of the forecast fell within that. I can't even say it. Fell within that range. Anyway, that's just 4 to 10. I mean, come on. And then Dave Tolaris at Weather Risk. That's what you have when you have an El Nino that is weakening and collapsing. You get this sort of, So we'll see. Seasonal forecasting. Let me just bring me back up here for a quick moment of soapbox. I get why there are seasonal forecasts. People naturally want to, know, and they ask. They're very curious. What's the hurricane season going to be like? Assigning numbers which are definitive in their nature, you say the number 6. That means something. If I had 6 eggs, you could visualize that. So saying that there's possibly going to be 6 hurricanes, people get a vision of that and they think, okay, but then what are they supposed to do about it, right? You could say 15 hurricanes, and maybe they say, well, that's a lot more than I'm used to hearing, and yes, maybe they take more action. But when do we ever have a forecast for 15 hurricanes? Never, that I can recall. And so when you hear these forecasts for a season as a whole, it's hard to make sense of it in terms of what that means for me. And even personally, what does that mean for me? What does that mean for Mark Sudduth here? Well, that means that I'm going to do exactly what I would do any year, and that is make sure that I am ready on a personal and a professional level. And since I actually track hurricanes, study hurricanes, educate about hurricanes for a living, I'm going to do the same thing I always do. What does that mean for you? On the other side of the screen there, that's up to you to decide. See, I don't have answers for you in the definitive sense. I just give you wisdom. That's up to you to decide, because everybody is different. So you look at these forecasts here, the spread of which are interesting to say the least. What do you do about it? Well, you just make sure you're ready, however that works for you. Different economic variables. Do you have one kid, no kids? Are you single? Are you married? Do you take care of your mom and dad? Maybe other extended family? Do you have a car? Do you have 5 exotic animals you got to take care of? I mean, my goodness, hurricane preparedness is not a one-size-fits-all scenario. So when you look at something like this, just say, okay, hurricane season's coming, time for me to get ready. That's what that should mean, in my opinion. I really like the sub-seasonal forecast stuff, where we can look out 30 days or less and see when the pattern's going to change and afford the opportunity for something to develop. And speaking of patterns changing, we're going to be looking at this more and more. Beautiful GOES satellite imagery. These animations now available from the National Hurricane Center satellite links, a couple of things that I immediately notice: strong upper level winds cutting across the Caribbean, no problems for development anytime soon. Strong upper level winds cutting across portions of the Great Plains coming out of Texas, and this will be a problem for development of thunderstorms. Isn't it interesting that shear up here, where upper level winds moving this way, low level flow coming in from the low levels this way, creates this spiraling effect in the atmosphere, and when you sort of burp thunderstorms up into that, for the lack of a better way of saying it, boil them up is probably more accurate, that's favorable for severe weather. But shear down in the tropics, where you have winds coming this way and thunderstorms trying to develop, or tropical waves coming this way, they get sheared apart. It's amazing how shear means different things for different weather entities. But the bottom line, no development issues anytime soon. Hey, it's only early May, but we will be watching this more and more. Speaking of severe weather, yep, that upper level wind pattern that I just showed you, where the shear is cutting across, or the upper level winds this way, low level flow, big strong high pressure out here, probably edging back this way some, low level flow coming in off that warm and moist Gulf. You get this shear developing, feeding the storm systems out here in the Great Plains, and voila, you get severe weather. This is the outlook for today. So you folks in the yellow and green, especially the yellow area, Kansas, almost all of Kansas included, you know what to do. You don't need Mark telling you, but just reminding you, we have a lot of distractions in our world these days. Make sure you're paying attention. What does it look like for tomorrow, Tuesday? Enhanced. And you bet there's going to be a lot of chasers out there. Classic setup for severe weather here in the Tornado Alley, right in the heart of the alley. Wouldn't be surprised if one of these days goes to moderate. So enhanced activity there, including Lubbock, Wichita. Well, these are enhanced plus the slight. But, Amarillo, Abilene, this is going to be a pretty big event. And if you follow the tornado chasers on social media, you'll see there will be hundreds of them out there tomorrow, and then again Wednesday, as the area of enhanced risk moves slightly more to the east here, and then the slight risk area also. I mean, this is going to be a big deal. You'll hear about this a lot. The Weather Channel will be covering it. You can guarantee that. Greg Forbes there with the Torcon, the tornado conditions. Here we go. I wish I could head out there, but just don't have the funding to do it right now. As May goes on, that might change. I still want to be able to head out and try something different on one of these days. I favor a time when the area is pretty much up through here. And what I'd like to do is drop several cameras ahead of time, like we do for hurricanes, something like that, inside of one of these enhanced areas or a moderate area, and see what happens. I'm not going chasing. You get yourself killed doing that. And I would like to just try something different. And I might be able to do that before we get through with May or into early June. Stay tuned. All right. Of also great concern, the slow-moving storm system that's going to be responsible for all of this mayhem also will result in more river flooding for our friends in Texas. So part of my job is to keep you aware and safe, and this is the awareness part, which will hopefully keep you safe. Some of these rivers here, the Trinity, the Colorado, the Brazos, Sabine, etc., are coming down into big cities, Houston, San Antonio, and Austin, from the hill country down to the coastal areas, even down to the coastal bend. Yes, we are going to see some problems here, so be prepared, be aware, heads up, etc. Be safe out there. And I talked about not driving through floodwater. Well, this is not tropical related at all. It's just a big weather event. So let me get some blue on here. This whole area, flooding could be a big deal. Don't be driving through that floodwater, please. Real quick look at the GFS. Let's go back to the beginning and speed it up. Show you that we really don't have anything over the next week coming out of the tropics. This is our vorticity field at about 5,000 feet in the atmosphere. This is what I use to show me areas where energy tries to bundle and come together, mainly down here in the tropics. And over the next week, we don't see that. Pretty good flow around this area of high pressure that's sitting out over the southwest Atlantic. And you can see that flow coming in, feeding these storms in the nation's midsection, the southern plains, etc. Yeah, that's definitely there, that fetch that comes around of moisture, but no organized areas of tropical activity. Instead, it's these mid-latitude disturbances coming across up here in the mid-latitudes, creating all the weather we just talked about. All right, let's kill that one and head over to this for just a moment. Okay, it's something I started on in November, and this has definitely been the longest that it has taken me to put together a documentary, but for good reason. This is the best I've ever done, by far. It's called Tracking the Hurricanes. That's the general term or name that I've given the series, going all the way back to 2004. This year it focuses on the 19 release time of the 2018 season, focuses on Florence and Michael, of course, but there is a lead up to that, a nice introduction, if you will, kind of explaining where we've come from over the last 14, 15 years with our technology. And really the whole idea behind this series is about how we track these storms, the technology we put in front of them, and what we do with that. What do we capture? That's the end result. I don't think I have any interviews with other people in this one. That's not really what I do. I'm not making a documentary about everybody that it affected. I'm showing you the storms themselves, the inside look. It's not that I don't care. It's just I can't have, a 5-part series. Maybe I could one day if we have enough funding to produce something like that. But I focus on the hurricanes, how we track them, and then what they bring to us. And in many cases, that's obviously a very negative thing. The impacts, they're not pleasant. But you see the cover there. Florence, that's New Bern, at almost peak surge time from the Neuse River, and then Michael is the bottom of the poster there. The morning after, literally just hasn't even been 24 hours. That's the first dawn since Michael made landfall, and that's an aerial shot that I took in Mexico Beach there. And it's a great documentary, it really is. And I try to watch it from an objective point of view. And is this good? Do I like it? And I do. The editing, the overall writing quality, it's all good. And there's a few scenes in there that I think they're my favorite, and I'll talk about that later on. I'll probably produce a few featurettes, as they call it, promoting this over the coming months, and I'll pick out a few of the scenes that I think are some of my favorites and do a little bit of an explainer on them, so forth and so on. So you're asking, all right, enough, Mark, when does it come out? All right, well, there's a group of people who help to make it possible. Those are the folks that support me here on Patreon, and others that we call producers that financially contributed or otherwise. They will have the first access starting Friday. It's only fair. I wish that I had a way to sort of roll it out on a red carpet premiere in LA, Houston, New York, that kind of thing, but this was not bankrolled by Hollywood, so we don't have that luxury. What I do have, though, is this ability here on Patreon and elsewhere to reward those who have stuck with me to help make this possible. Not only by directly funding the film itself, if you will, but just supporting me in general. So those folks will have the first access starting Friday, and then either Monday or Wednesday, I'm still working on it because I got to figure out how I'm going to distribute this to everybody. It'll be available to everyone after, we'll say, next Monday, a week from today. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, those 72 hours there in total, I'll make it available to the supporters first, and you'll get an email, and you'll hear me talking about it. You'll know, you'll see, and then everybody else, it'll be available after that. I'm still working on how to do that. My goal is to have it on Amazon Video, the video services of Amazon. I mean, come on, everybody knows what Amazon is. They're video direct services. I'm just working out how to do that. Since I'm not a major Hollywood studio, it's a little harder to get your foot in the door, but I'm working on it. At the very least, I can guarantee it'll be available on Vimeo, which is a professional platform that has a great set of tools for creators, film producers like myself, independent filmmakers. So it's definitely going to be on Vimeo and hopefully on Amazon. So stay tuned. That's as much as I can tell you for right now. I'm working on it. Literally today I've been working on those end credits and the folks that have supported me, putting your names in there, etc., making sure I get those right. I don't want to leave anybody out, because once it's done, it's done. I can't go back and edit it. All right, so Tracking the Hurricanes 2018 edition, available to a select few come Friday. Everybody else next week, I'll let you know. Believe me, I'll let you know. And, real quick, let me just pop me back up. I'm also working on, I forgot to mention this. I should have made notes. I'm very excited about it, you can tell. I'm also working on showing this in its full glory here in Wilmington, North Carolina, sometime later this month or very early June at Regal Cinemas. However, that costs about $1,750 to do so. So I'm trying to figure out, where can I come up with $1,750, because I don't want to sell tickets. I want to make it free. So there's the catch. So I'm working on getting somebody to help sponsor it and support it, either by making a total donation or a combination of a few people or businesses. I'm working on that part. I'm just letting you know. I do want to show it, though, at the theater. I've already been in touch with the Regal Cinemas management in Denver, the company. I guess they're headed up in Denver. That's where the email came from anyway. And I've already got everything set up. I just got to figure out how I'm going to pay for it and exactly what the day will be. It'll be a Monday, a Tuesday, a Wednesday, or a Thursday, and probably 7 o'clock. Wouldn't it be amazing to see this on, I keep bumping the microphone, like a 30-foot screen or whatever it is. So I want to show it here in Wilmington, and then I want to show it in Tallahassee, Florida as well, also in early June. And maybe elsewhere after that, we'll see. I am that confident of how awesome a production that this is, that I really do want to bring it to the big screen in as many cities as possible. But each one of those is $1,750 a pop, so I got to figure out how to pay for that, and then we can get over that hurdle and show it on the big screen. All right, now I'm done. So we went over a lot. I appreciate it. Remember, National Hurricane Preparedness Week. Read up about it, especially if you're new to the coast or even a couple hundred miles from the coast. Make sure you are aware of your risks, what you're going to do about those risks, and then be ready. Hurricane season's just around the corner, and it's my job to keep you motivated, to learn as much as you can, and to keep you safe if something heads your way. Thanks for tuning in. I do appreciate it. I am Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com. Thanks for watching from your side of the screen. I'll be back with more for you a week from today.